course of the spring term of Elder College. And it is my privilege to be hosting this course and for our esteemed presenter, Chris Offer. Chris has had an extensive career. He started wearing the red serge a few years ago and got his Bachelor of Criminology from Simon Fraser, and then went to Ottawa, where he got his Master of Business Administration, and he perfected the art of making tourtière, although he never shares tourtière at Christmas. Then he moved to the Vancouver Police Force, where he also went into police administration role. He got involved with the Rotary Club of downtown Chinatown and became district governor a few years ago. He has been involved with Rotary for many, many years, and he has been instrumental in the development of the Rotary Peace Program and the creation of the peace centers in several universities around the world. He has also been involved with the World Health Organization and has traveled to several areas, supervising World Health projects in conjunction with Rotary. He has also participated in projects like the water project in Laos as a volunteer. So, and right now he keeps linking the world via Zoom conferences, right, left, and center. So I give you Chris Offer.
Thank you very much, Guillermo. Welcome, everybody. Thanks, Guillermo. That's certainly the most recent introduction I've received, so I appreciate it. I'm going to start. First of all, we're recording this. If anybody cares, there's some people going to miss it. We're going to try to share the recording with those that can't be here today. So we'll see if technology makes that possible, but just be aware that it is being recorded. And we're going to see if we can start the sharing here. I just got to go back here. Okay. Thank you very much. And what we're going to focus on, and we'll get a chance to meet each of you in a minute or two. But we're going to use some Rotary material, but primarily we're going to use material from the Institute for Economics and Peace. That you'll see the structure of the particular topic. Peace is a huge topic, and many people have views on it and different aspects of it. We're going to do this in three. Today, we're really going to talk about systems approach. The model of the Institute for Economics and Peace on positive peace really needs a systems structure of that. Systems approach to business, systems approach to government, systems approach to non-government agencies or any organization is complex, and we're going to touch it, unfortunately, just in an hour, probably fairly superficial. Then we're going to, the 8 pillars of positive peace, go into them in some depth, and then wrap this up with how do we put it to work? How could you actually make this work? And to accomplish this, we're going to use discussion, and I really want you to participate. We've got a small group, so I don't think we need to use the chat box unless you want to, or raise your hand, speak up, wave at me if that becomes unmanageable, which I don't think it will, we'll revert to some other method, but we'll use a couple of videos to break up, listen to each other talk. Next week, if all goes well, we'll have a guest speaker, Michael Collins, who's the executive director for the Americas for the Institute for Economics and Peace, whose office is in New York. Michael's an Australian, and you'll learn about the IEP, the Institute for Economics and Peace. But rather than me try to explain what they do, how they do their research, how they come up with a rating for Canada, for the United States, for Zimbabwe, for Sudan, on how peaceful they are, Michael will explain to us next week, and you can question him on about it. So, and a little bit of reading your homework assignments. I will send get Guillermo to send some material out. We'll talk about that later today. And if you want to read it, great for additional coverage, or just scan it. Really up to you. So this is sort of our rules of engagement for these sessions. We want everybody to be respectful, and I don't anticipate that there will be anything but that. Just here's a reminder: we're critical of ideas, not people. Some of the ideas that I talk about here you may not like, but speak up. We want to give everybody a chance to speak. If you're unclear, interrupt me, interrupt another speaker politely, and get clarification. Collaborate, don't compete. And the final one, if there's something that offends you, talk out immediately. We're all from different backgrounds, different demographics. We sometimes use words unintentionally, or words that have different meaning to different people. If we say something that you feel isn't appropriate, don't let it ride, interrupt us, and we'll try to either apologize if that's appropriate, or explain why a particular word or something was used. So let's meet each of you. And just tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're here, your background, any see if I can get my screen back here.
Clicking view, Guillermo.
Yeah.
If the view will give us our.
It's at my end. I've done something here. Hold on.
Okay, let's see if I can.
There we go.
There we go.
Okie doke.
Sorry about that. We had too many clicks there. So who wants to start? Paulette, I'll start with you. I know you. So who are you, and why are you here?
And okay, why am I here, and what is my experience with being a peacemaker?
Yes.
Or a consensus maker? Well, I think that, I'm Paulette Tattersall. I've been an educator all my life, and then in retirement got involved in the business of lifelong learning in a structural way by being a member of Elder College for the last, and participant in Elder College for the last 17 years. I guess I'll just say briefly that I discovered that, peacemaking in any organization, in any group where people are working together, the importance of common goals, and a lot of the principles that you just outlined initially about how you were hoping that we would collaborate together. So the key word to me is collaboration, and the meeting of everyone coming, feeling that they're meeting the needs, the needs, but also people learning to working with people so that they realize that that doesn't necessarily mean getting what you personally want in terms of an outcome. I'll leave it at that, sort of on a personal and career level. Thank you.
Thanks. How about who else? Kathy, how about you? Who
Oh,
are you?
well, I'm the host coordinator with Elder College, and after I retired, I was looking for something to get into. And so this has been great because I'm learning, but I don't have to do the teaching. And as far as being a peacemaker, I guess most of the time at school when I was a teacher, it's peacemaking in the classroom and how to relate that to the kids without saying, you have to make peace here. You know, you do it a slightly different way. And I think at home with the family, I have 4 kids and I have lots of brothers and sisters. And I find that the peacemaking has to go on a lot, even if we're just texting. So, and so then I wanted to hear more about what you were going to say in relation to that, because I haven't branched out. It's just been mostly family and the immediate neighborhood and the kids at school, et cetera, in that way.
Okay,
So.
thank you. Who else? Ron, who are you, Ron?
My name is Ron Morrison. I recently retired about 6 months ago. My background was I taught at Kwantlen Polytechnic University in the for about 30 years in employment law and business law and business negotiations, and as well for the last 20 years or so, maybe longer, I was an arbitrator under the Residential Tenancy Act. And in terms of peacemaking, the role of an arbitrator is well, it's always been this way, but we recently got authority to kind of act as facilitators to try to mediate disputes rather than arbitrate disputes. So my experience is sometimes the hearing would start, and we do it now by conference call, and people hate each other, landlords and tenants, and there's a lot of hostility. But there is no greater high than an hour later, you can get them to look at what they really want to get out of the whole situation. And if they can come to an agreement and in most cases, the relationship is coming to an end. So it's an agreement how to best come up with an end. But boy, if you can come up and help them come to an agreement to facilitate an agreement between the landlord and the tenant, there's no greater high than that. And of course, if you can't, you know, then I have to make a decision as to who's going to win and who's going to lose. But so that's kind of my background, and I haven't done it in terms of organizations and so on, but that's on a personal level there.
Yeah, I think you'll see a real connection when we talk about negative peace and positive peace. I don't know your business, but I would suspect arbitration is more on the negative peace side and mediation is more on the positive peace side. So yeah, interesting. Who's next? Who else wants to jump in there? Sure, go ahead, Barry.
Barry Howard is my name, and other than studying political science in university, I have absolutely no experience or knowledge of peace. And that's probably why I'm here today. I really am interested in this subject, and I think the positive piece was the part that really attracted me.
I bet you do have a background in peace. Peace is local. It's just not just global, and it's our peace in our organization or in Ron, landlord and tenant is peace issues. You can see catastrophic things that have happened when landlords and tenants become violent. Terrible things have happened in our country, in our city, in other places of real violence happening when those issues aren't resolved. So peace can be really local as well as global.
I'll go ahead if you want.
Sure, go ahead, Brenda.
Sure. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm in private practice. And I was looking at your initial rules and regulations for participation. I think with my couples, I do exactly the opposite. I want them to argue. I want them to talk over each other. So it's going to be enjoyable to see people actually wait. Um, I'm also very involved with an organization in Uganda, which has a lot of political fallout from what goes on within the country. And I have also applied to be on a mayor's task force here for inclusion for minorities of all sorts. And I thought having this kind of understanding and maybe being able to echo some of it within the context of that particular task force would be useful.
Or maybe sometime we'll briefly talk about it, but Rotary International in Uganda in Kampala with Makerere University has just started a peace program funding scholarships there. So there could be a connection with your people because they're really looking for people in Africa working in the field. So some potential. Sally?
Unmute here. I think that Paulette and Kathy probably gave my background as well, retired educator and busy with Elder College. And have I been a peacemaker? Well, I was raised in a family of 6, the oldest, and I raised 4 children, and 3 of them were boys that were 4.5 years apart altogether. So yes, many times, but I'm most intrigued with how it works in other areas. And like Barry, I like that word positive in front of it.
Good. Sorry, I don't remember your name, Elder College.
Oh, I'm Frances. And I guess this would qualify as being a peacemaker. I have 35 years with ICBC and did a lot of dispute resolution. Didn't always have peace in my ear when someone was yelling at me about their problem or their query, but you have to come to a resolution in some format. I'm also wondering if we'll be discussing things like what's happening in, say, Myanmar, where the peace is just so broken, and how do we can that ever be resolved? Like what methods can be brought to try to bring that kind of peace? And also I have, I'm a recent volunteer member with Elder College. I say recent, I think maybe 3 years on the communications team. So, and I just think this is will be a stimulating course for me to listen to. Thank you. Oh, and also one more thing, I am the person that needs to leave at 2:30. Sorry, my apologies to the entire group.
Not a problem. And Miramar, yes, I mean, it's a good thing. And as we start to work through the 8 pillars of positive peace, think about each of them, how, things like corruption, open communications, how some of those things would apply to the Miramar and what they can be done. And we certainly have seen countries that were terrible strife. Uganda was just mentioned. Uganda's still has many problems. It's far more peaceful than it was not too many years ago. Who have I missed? James?
Jim, you're muted. Jim, you're muted.
How do we let him know? Can you unmute him? No.
No.
All right, thank you. Thank you all. Well, I mean, we use the word peacemaker, and I'm afraid, our friends to the south, when they hear the word peacemaker, they think probably of a Remington rifle.
Yeah.
Peacemaker. And I think I've really been in admiration of harmony wherever environment I've been in, whether it's a family or government or education or in industry. And now that I'm retired, I look back And I try to sort of analyze those situations where harmony was lacking and how much it did not contribute to progress within that group. And so it's something that I'm interested in personally, and I look forward to everyone's comments.
Good. Did
Thanks.
you want to add something, Kathy?
Guillermo, Kathy's muted too.
I just,
No.
not all of us carry guns in the States.
Yeah.
Us, don't forget, I'm here too, so you have to.
Yeah.
Now, Chris,
One more here.
for your information, Jim was.
Get Adrian.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Adrian, you had been.
Yep.
Well, I feel like I'm in good company. I'm also a retired educator, and we had all kinds of strategies when I used to spend hours supervising on the playground, resolving conflicts with small children. So that's sort of my background. As for peace, I used to volunteer for my church organization, the Canadian Catholic Organization for Development and Peace, which was basically an NGO that worked with developing countries at the grassroots level to try and find ways to help people in developing countries have some kind of an income. And I guess the idea was that, you know, if people have a fair income, that's one way of hopefully bringing some peace to that particular area or region. And so when I saw this title in the Elder College website, I thought, this sounds like something that would be really interesting, especially, you know, in light of those events that happened on January 6th down in the United States. And I'm very interested to sort of understand, how, possibly we could have some dialogue to understanding how we can bring more peaceful solutions, because obviously people are in a state of some kind of agitation. And so anyway, so I saw this and I thought, I'll listen and see what people have to offer.
Good. Anything else?
I was going to mention to you is the talking stick that the Lander Rotary Club uses was a gift from Jim Morin.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
And now I got my involvement in positive peace, if you want to call it that way, what happened in Chile after 7 years of the dictatorship of Pinochet. I had decided to do my political science master's. And one of the goal of the group was try to bring all the people that were for a peaceful resolution of an end of the dictatorship, bring them together while they were all still accusing each other to being responsible for bringing down the government. I must say, I didn't see it happen during my life in Chile, but it did happen a few years later when democracy was able to return.
Good. Thanks, Guillermo. So we got a diverse, more on the teacher side, but certainly people in the mediation and ICBC, a different variety of skills that we do that. So let's plunge into this, and we're going to talk about a systems approach to this to start with. So let's get caught up here. Where were we? There we are. So we're going to talk about positive peace, and we're going to use the Institute for Economics and Peace, their model which has these 8 pillars, and we'll get into those, each one of them and what they mean and how they interrelate, and then how we bring that to projects, whether it's globally in a situation like Miramar, or locally in a local organization. And we've got we can think about the hospice in Ladner as a hot spot of conflict, and think about that. We could think about the homeless camps in Victoria. Another person died in Beacon Hill Park today in Victoria, and the camp in Vancouver. Those issues that are local, it's not all global. Some of those conflicts. So let's talk about what you think peace is or isn't. No, I did it again. I think I'm doing this wrong. I've lost. I'm doing something wrong on. Guillermo, can you stop the slide sharing?
That's what I'm trying to do.
I'm clicking something wrong at this end. There we go. Sorry about that. I'll figure out what I'm doing wrong and try not to do it. So what's peace? Anybody want to jump in there? What your idea of peace is? Anybody want to try a definition of peace?
I'm gonna give it a go if you don't mind.
Sure.
My thinking is that you actually give and take. So it's a workable compromise to me, in my mind.
Okay. A workable compromise?
Without too much integrity being sacrificed. That's what I think.
Yeah. Good. Anybody else? Definition of peace? We heard some of them in your introduction. Some of you really used definitions. Anybody else want to try?
Peace is a state of being on an individual and a collective level, where people have some space in which to realize themselves and their goals and their dreams and so on.
Yeah, and I think that's tilting towards the positive peace side, and some of those things we're.
Well, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else?
When people don't feel threatened.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I think more in terms of harmony and mutual respect for other people's opinions.
Okay. Respect, harmony, get along, all these conflicts that cause these issues. And I say we've got examples, micro conflicts, if you like, locally, or these macro conflicts in Miramar, Brazil, Venezuela right now is the hot spot in South America. The conflicts there, how will that be resolved? So yeah, they're around. Okay, let's see if I can bring these slides back without screwing up anything too badly. So. So what is peace? What isn't peace is the opposite of that. And we can talk about the opposite of those things. So here's some of the concepts of positive peace, negative peace. Peace is often the end of war, the end of violence, the end of conflict. Moving to the other side of the equation, equity, cooperation, harmony, less trauma, reconciliation, clearing the past, important in conflicts, like in Guillermo mentioned Chile, getting over that. Colombia is going through that, where they had amnesty for the FARC guerrillas and the military, the government people. That it was hard in the Colombian conflict for many years to know who was worse. But no consequences for the guerrillas, no consequences for the government people is very difficult to get over in some of these conflicts and in micro conflicts. We're talking about some of your business, and even ICBC was mentioned, a car crash where both sides are convinced they're right. Getting past that to a resolution is sometimes very difficult. Negative attitudes, achieving reconciliation. Here's some quotes. We can look to the past about what people have said about past. Of course, John Lennon's song, we can all hum. We're all too young to remember that, but that type of words. More recently, Barack Obama's words, and a Canadian context, Lester Pearson, who tends to be forgotten sometimes, but a very significant role in building the peacekeepers. You remember Lester Pearson won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work in the Middle East. So a very important Canadian when you look at peacemaking. And Eleanor Roosevelt, I think I like this particular quote because we talk a lot about peace. We believe in peace. But the last one, we must work for it. You can't just talk about it. You can't just sing kumbaya. You need to be active to do something for peace to work. And a positive peace, the Institute for Economics and Peace isn't the sole group that has done many people. In fact, this quote from Martin Luther King is engraved on the wall. I don't know how many of you have been to Washington, D.C. since the Martin Luther King Memorial was put up on the mall. And of course, ironically, this is a short distance from the Capitol where so much conflict happened a month ago. This quote is engraved with some other quotes from 1967 of Martin Luther talking about the concept of positive peace. So an important resolution. These are the 8 pillars, and we'll come back to these. I'm just going to, we're not going to go into them in any depth right now, but these are the 8 pillars of positive peace. For today, what's most important is those lines that join them. They're all connected, and that's the important part to remember when we talk about these 8 pillars, when we talk about positive peace, the concept that these are all connected. And I'm going to, don't need to write these down. I'm going to send you a PDF, a document with some of this stuff on. So you'll have it in front of you with this. But what's most important, these are connected. None of them are in a silo. None of them operate independently. They're all interconnected. And that's the most, if one goes down, it has an impact on all of them. If one is improved, if work is done to improve one of these 8, it has an impact on all of them. So that's the important part. Interrupt me if there's any questions. As I say, we're going to talk about these at length individually, each of these 8 pillars. Okay. This is a short video. It's only about 2-3 minutes. It's from filmed by the Institute for Economics and Peace at Stanford University. They've had a conference there for several years. I spoke at it in 2019 on Rotary's role in peace at Stanford. And it sort of shows, gives you a little bit of background on that. If you can't
is that it's so adaptable. Anyone can adapt it to their own needs, their own work, but still specific enough that they can be very deliberate about the work that they do to try to build peace.
I think what is useful to me, having been a scientist and a business person, is to see somebody pull together data and turn it into actionable information to help reduce violence in a step-by-step uniform manner that we can all apply. And because IEP has invested in the measurements, we can see if we've made progress and we can help sustain that progress.
I think the Peace Index really helps us to understand the complexity of the phenomenon of peace, the fact that it is not one-dimensional but really multidimensional. It challenges us to think, in deeper ways about what it means to really have a true peace.
In the particular case of Mexico, the Mexico Peace Index has also been a very important public debate because it has forced local officials to think about what they're doing to improve their ranking in this index. When the index comes out, governors pay attention, and citizens also want their governments to be more accountable, and this metric puts us in a kind of common language that we can speak about whether peace is progressing or not.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit jerky for that show. A little bit jerky, Guillermo.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the voices came out loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah, the risks of using Zoom, and it's a wonderful system when it works. So let's talk about a systems approach for a few minutes. That the ripple effect, the idea that you make a little change and that has a significant impact. That little change can send those ripples out. And the same with peace, that the idea that in peace, small changes can have significant impact on changing, whether it's a small local conflict or a bigger national conflict. One way to think about this idea of a systems approach is ecology. We understand that in greater the impact of on animal plants and animals. We seem to understand that a little more than with people and organizations. We sometimes forget that this works the same in ecology as in with people and organizations that people build. We understand what we do with the soil impacts on the plants. We understand that the plants impact on the animals. We understand that the weather affects all this. We understand that they're all interrelated, and a change in one of these, a change in the weather, a change in the soil, a change in the type of animals has an effect on all of it. So that's part of the impact. So these relationships are from just yourself to your interpersonal, whether that's family, organizations, local, regional, national, and global. So think about for a minute the relationships you have. There's several school teachers. So think of a classroom, the impacts in the classroom of that teacher, of one of the students, of the work in the classroom, how that ripples out to that. We're all here today because of the impact as teacher we had in elementary school, in high school, in university. All of those teachers we've had in our lives, official teachers and unofficial teachers, brought us here today. So we've got all these systems. Think about that. Local. What local systems are you involved in? Anybody want to tell me which local systems you're involved in? Somebody said they were applying for one of the mayor's committees. Who was that?
That was Brenda.
Brenda, so if you're accepted on this committee, you're going to have this ripple effect local. What you do on that committee could affect me. I live in Delta. So you could make a decision on your committee that ripples down and has an adverse effect to me or a positive effect on me. With you involved, I know it's only going to be positive, but those type of effects. Anybody involved in any national organizations?
Have in the past, less so as retired, but of course, Rotary indirectly, but yeah. Well, does.
What national organizations, Paulette?
Oh, the national organizations were organizations, associations of teachers in particular areas in the bilingualism and the teaching of immersion, and also standardizing the teaching of language across various languages, and also in bringing on English as an additional language to immigrants and multiculturalism, all those kinds of things. And I found, it's a shame because I found that I don't have those networks now, but I follow them. But you carry on what you believe in, what you're currently doing, and you apply some of what you did there to again. And I think that's what happened in my case.
So national professional organizations.
Yeah, primarily, but advocacy organizations too. Advocacy, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Religious organizations, we can throw in a variety of faith-based organizations, locally, nationally, internationally. We can think of the impact, positive and negative, of faith-based organizations, how they influence their members and other members. And if I'm offending anybody, yell at me. But the hospice, the faith-based versus the non, or people that interpreted various ways has caused conflict in our community without saying who's right or wrong. So national and global organizations have these things. So it's a way to think about these systems. These are interrelated. So there's a picture pre-COVID, but so socializing, there's a system there. We're socializing, and maybe COVID's a great example of a system, how there was a wonderful is not the right word, awful chart that the government did that showed the spread of COVID from that trivia night at a pub in Coquitlam. From one active case of COVID, they traced it out in an infographic to 300 people, including children and a school and a daycare and businesses, and 300 people out of work for 2 weeks because of this thing. So that sort of systems approach. Villages, communities, whether they're in Western world or developing world, people, organizations, and individuals, all part of a system. Different systems we can think of that way. Then the big global, the United Nations, various organizations that do it. And the United Nations isn't one organization, it's dozens. I think there's more UN employees in Switzerland than there is in New York City. A lot of the headquarters of the agencies, the United Nations, are in parts of Switzerland, and very big organizations of thousands of employees. I think there's 35,000 UN employees in Switzerland. In the various, whether they're the International on Education, intellectual property rights, refugees, all sorts of organizations like that. And of course, our environment that we've talked about already, and a classroom, the impact of these groups on classrooms. Okay, one more, I wonder if I can. Just going to stop the share for a minute.
There.
There we are. um, it won't let me optimize the video clip for some reason. I don't know why.
You want to share the screen again?
I'm going to share the screen because I've got another video, but it's going to be jerky. For some reason, there's a thing where you optimize for, but it doesn't want to. It doesn't want to.
Obey your command.
At the Omidyar Group, we believe using systems thinking to guide our practice has the potential to deepen our impact. A great deal of our success hinges on the mindsets that propel a systems practice. In the social impact world, we face challenges that behave in complex, unpredictable ways that are constantly evolving, problems that seem intractable despite best efforts. To deepen our impact on these kinds of challenges, we embrace 4 key mindset shifts.
The first shift in thinking is to seek health, not mission accomplished. It's attractive and can even be mobilizing to set our goal as a clear-cut, once-and-for-all solution, especially when working on difficult, high-stakes challenges. But complex systems don't get solved. They are constantly evolving and don't have a finish line. We are constantly striving to improve the health of the system, and this healthier system will address the problems we care about.
It's like leading a healthy lifestyle. It isn't something you check off your list when you lose a few pounds. It's something you are always working on. As you go about your life and your body changes, you continue improving and adapting to stay healthy.
A key to working toward healthy systems is to see patterns, not just problems. When confronted with a specific problem, our natural inclination is to tackle it head-on, but in a complex system, stepping back from the problem at hand allows us to see something more important, the patterns behind the problem. Identifying these patterns and the ways they drive the larger system is more important than focusing on just the problem itself.
Take a problem like high blood pressure. Treating the condition itself is important, but the way to sustaining better health is to look for patterns in factors such as diet, exercise, stress, and underlying disease, all of which affect and are affected by each other. Using medication can lower blood pressure, but if the treatment doesn't address the underlying patterns and their interconnections, your health is still at risk.
Seeing patterns helps us recognize where we can unlock change rather than imposing change. When trying to address a complex challenge, we can sometimes get too focused on looking for the broken part and then trying to parachute in with a fix. But systems aren't broken. In fact, the forces needed to improve systems' health are already within it. Our job is to find and unlock these forces so that the system can change itself, either by strengthening the forces that make it healthier or by weakening ones that make it unhealthy.
Vaccines are a good example of this. They engage the system by strengthening T cells and antibodies. Building up these positive forces allows them to continue to recognize and fight the organisms that want to weaken the system. Rather than trying to save the system from outside, vaccines are unlocking the forces within the system that can help the body stay healthy.
Of course, when things are complicated, not everything goes as planned. That's why the last mindset shift is plan to adapt. Don't stay the course. In the social impact world, there's an understandable value placed on finding a solution and staying the course. Changes in approach are not always viewed favorably, but dynamic systems are always shifting, and that requires us to adapt.
We are like sailors. We start by mapping a course, but know full well that once we get beyond the first buoy, we'll have to adjust the course based on winds, currents, and obstacles that may lie above or below the surface. Likewise, we strive to navigate ever-changing dynamics while still keeping an eye on the horizon.
At the Omidyar Group, we know achieving enduring social change requires the ongoing effort of many people over many years. At times, working on such tough, intractable challenges can feel daunting, even disheartening, because the road ahead is long and uncertain. However, a manageable first step on this journey is for each of us to cultivate these 4 mindsets for ourselves. Each of us can strive to seek health, not mission accomplished. See patterns, not just problems. Unlock change, don't impose it. And plan to adapt, don't stay the course.
These mindset shifts won't provide easy or quick answers, but they will help us see new ways to approach intractable problems. And ultimately, we can collectively create the enduring social change we seek by improving the health of the systems around us.
Any comments on that? Those are the 4 things in that video. Do they make sense?
I had a comment.
Kathy, go ahead.
It's not a positive comment. I felt more positive about all these things before the pandemic hit. And then I thought things were going smoother, but when the pandemic hit, it uncovered all the things that they're trying to solve there that are not working, where you can't even get anybody to agree on to take the vaccine. There's a big difference, or even wear a mask. So how are you going to bring peace, more peace in the world using many of these things when we can't even agree to put on a mask to save ourselves from getting sick? Am I missing the point here? Or is this too minor, or is that what you're saying?
No, and I'm not naive enough. I was a police officer for 31 years that spent a lot of time trying to get people to do things they didn't want to do. And a lot of teachers here in ICB, so you've all got experience, and we know we're not going to get everybody on board for everything. People have different views, and there's a time to be tolerant of their views, and there's a time when their views are so their ideas are so against us, we can't tolerate them. But yelling at somebody because they're not wearing a mask, I don't think is the solution. I would sooner leave a store than start a confrontation with somebody because they're not wearing a mask. Now, the people that work in the store haven't got that thing. So I don't think what you're saying is why we have conflict. If everybody was in harmony, we wouldn't need this. We wouldn't be talking about this at all today, because of that. Will we ever get where there's no conflict? No, I'm not that naive that we'll ever get to a part where there's no conflict. But I think this gives us some structure, an alternate structure, how to resolve some of those conflicts.
Yeah, I thought there was not as, somebody said give and take, which is a great idea, but I'm finding things have tilted more, that there's more take than give, and only certain people want to give.
Yep.
And we're on this Zoom conference, like so the givers, but there's so many takers. That's sort of what I was getting from some of this.
Yeah, you work through this. Let's bring that idea back. I'm not sure we're going to resolve it right now. Keep that idea. When we start into these 8 pillars, there's a few of those that may help you, and we never get there. But COVID, in British Columbia particularly, I think we certainly have more people on side with masks, and a small vocal minority that thinks it's some sort of strange conspiracy that Bill Gates is directing or something. I don't know. Will everybody, the anti-vaxxer, out there are strong. The evidence is overwhelming in favor of all types of vaccine, but it's difficult to convince them, and I don't know the strategies. Any other comments on these 4 points from the video?
Well, I found it very compelling, that sentence about the end result or the solution is not permanent, that we have to revisit because one of the problems we have, oh, we solved that. That's it. Put it on the shelf. Let's face the next issue. No, no, no. It's solved for now.
Yes.
I think that was, and we have to keep an eye on to make sure that it doesn't relate.
Yep. Okay, so just a few ideas about system thinking. Remember, this is only 4 in this, but the original story is the 6 blind men who meet the elephant, and all the different ways each of them sees an elephant, and they don't see the whole. When you look at a part of an elephant, you get a very different idea of what it is than when you see the whole of the elephant. And this is the strategy of this systems thinking, looking at the whole. I touched on homelessness. Does what are the causes of homelessness? Anybody want to, or what is the cause? Why are these people in Strathcona Park? Why are the people in Beacon Hill Park? What's caused that?
Well, I would say in most cases is dependency on some kind of addiction.
Yeah. So there's an addiction. So giving them a whole. Go ahead.
Sorry, I think it's the social system that calls it an addiction. I mean, really, there's a mental health problem for a good portion of folks, and then there's a socioeconomic problem. Okay. My thinking is.
Yeah. So socioeconomic, addiction, drugs, alcohol, mental health, another type of challenges for some people. And the research shows one of the largest is unemployment. Loss of employment is that what pushes people into homelessness, whether they think it's going to be temporary or long term. Being thrown out of the house for many young homeless teenagers, it's being thrown out of the home for them. For many women, it's a break in their marital status, separation, or they walk out of the house because of domestic violence. What I'm saying is that in homelessness, there's a whole bunch of causes, and the solution sometimes, a home is not the problem. A job is the problem. Alcohol treatment is the solution. I was in Taiwan, Taipei, at a Rotary project, and we visited a women's shelter in Taipei. And the Mandarin word, or the Taiwanese Mandarin word, translates to wanderers. They don't call the homeless, they call them wanderers. I always thought that was a better term. Homelessness always, to me, implies that's the solution. And for many it is. To get employment, if you've got a home, if you can clear up, you can go out and find a job possibly. But for others, it is. So I sometimes think by labeling it homelessness, that implies the solution. And it's not a systems thinking. It's not all these things that we have defined as homelessness, and looking at all of them and that. And another one is political activism. I have no doubt that once Strathcona, all the people in Strathcona Park are relocated, another homeless camp will pop up in Vancouver. And anybody that doubts that hasn't looked at the history, and some of it's politically activated. A different approach. A definition from one person of systems. And you can probably come up with your own definition or many other definitions. Just some of the ways to look at disconnected pieces versus interconnected. And a big part of positive peace in the Institute for Economics and Peace is the interconnection of the pieces. the linear thinking, and the video depicted that linear thinking, that people think in a line. And as Guillermo said, the solution is often only temporary. You have to circle back. You have to look at it in a variety of ways. Silos, lumping things into silos, and trying to solve each problem as a silo. Treating addiction for homelessness doesn't help the people that are unemployed. It doesn't help the person who's been forced out of their home by domestic violence. That's a different solution. So you need a different approach. Looking at the whole part is systems, and that's the piece. Looking at all the parts that cause it. We were asked about Miramar, and I don't know all the pieces there, but I suspect there's a lot of pieces that are causing the problems there. I doubt if many of them are religious, even though a lot of these conflicts are hidden by under religion. Analyzing each of the pieces versus looking at the whole once again. And once again, looking at pieces in isolation. So you get a bunch of little diagrams there, pencil diagrams, but a way to look at it. Any questions on those? Any comments? Make sense? Sort of, okay. And this group's all on the right-hand side of this chart, I know. And you can see the different, think about issues you've had. Think about the approaches that you've had in dealing with problems, whether they're family problems, neighbor problems, civic problems, global problems. I think a lot of them can fall into these various ways of thinking. Thinking linear in a line will solve the problem by going ahead in a particular direction.
Chris, just perhaps a comment or just sharing. I worked for quite a long time with someone who was a very linear thinker, and just looking at the other systems thinkers, and I'm sure that this isn't the full answer either, the systems thinker. That's me all over. And I look at keywords, and we had a terrible time because she would start from what she sensed was the beginning and move toward what she sensed was the end. And then I was looking at the whole and the process and everything else, and then coming back. And I think we were both extremely frustrated with each other. And that doesn't mean that in some ways we weren't both effective, but we got feedback from others that we were more effective working together than not. Yeah, so I'm just thinking that it's not either or, is it really?
No.
There are times when in initiating or working on a particular focus, the linear needs to take place just to even make a connection, but then it would seem to me that the two play a part in when we're trying to
a linear
together towards something.
To me, a linear could, but in linear, you've still got to be aware of all the pieces. There's rarely one piece. As I said, my background as a police officer, it's like going to a noise complaint. The person's complaining about the noise from their neighbor. The linear is go tell the neighbor, the police knock at the door, turn your radio down, turn your stereo down, stop making so much noise. The system thinking is, why are you calling the police? And after a conversation with it, you discover that the neighbor took his parking spot. And the noise complaint is you're really angry about the parking spot. And this is a dispute between two neighbors. turning the stereo down for one night is not going to resolve the dispute between the new neighbors. There's much more going on here, and you know, they may not remember why it started, but the fence, the leaves falling from the tree, the kids making noise, whatever, and you know you're just going to be back at that house again if you don't get them to talk and resolve it. The linear is, go in there, tell the neighbor to turn the noise down, and you're back in your police car and drive away. The problem is solved. But it isn't, because you're back there tomorrow night. It's not the noise complaint tomorrow night. It's something else. It's the parking complaint. It's the kids are running around. You think the kids are not being taken care of. Whatever it is. Continuing on with this theme. The linear and possible solutions to when we see this type of thinking or problem solving. The emphasis continuously is looking at the whole. And when we talk about peace, it's critical that we talk about the whole, all the pieces working together. Okay, any questions on those? Who was in, I have to bring up here, who is it? Ron, in mediation, does this make sense when you're in a mediation approach?
Yeah, yes, it does. But with the caveat there, with the mediation, to do it right, it takes an enormous amount of time and energy. And you face obstacles, of course, when people don't really want to do, you know, I mean, they've got such strong opinions one way or the other, and to actually change people, to influence people's change and so on, does create. And I guess, how much time and energy do we have to deal with the noise complaint, you as a police officer, you know? I mean, to really dig deeper and to get underneath the problem, you know, it could be, God knows, you know, maybe there's a kind of a personality conflict and all of the rest of it. But how do we balance that, you know, with, you know, to try to solve it, especially when you meet resistance, when people don't really want to solve the problem.
Yep.
You know,
yep.
You know, I mean, in my experience, you try very hard to mediate and try very hard to get, you know, but when you get some people that are so entrenched in their way, all right, I'll take it away and I'll decide the case, period.
Yep. Yeah. And that's unfortunately, sometimes the arbitrary decision, this is the way it's going to be, and whether it's a police officer, where it's a government agency, where it's rent controls, landlord and tenant disputes, whatever the at some point mediation you attempt to work, but sometimes it doesn't, and you know the problem hasn't gone away. It probably will come back, but for the time being, it's resolved. Yeah.
And I think just following up on that, how, I mean, we look at the, you know, the masking problem, and say in the States, and the anti-vacciner problem in the States, and all of the rest of it. How much of those strongly held positions relate to that, and how much of it relates to other factors, i.e. political and influence from you know, certain people and so on. So how do you get at it? You know, how do you, can you change people? You know, I don't know. And if so, how how do you change?
Yeah, and and to me, I think you can change, and I think the structure is one way. Is it perfect? No. Will it change everybody? No. Somebody's got deep entrenched libertarian views, and government's telling them to wear a mask. You know, it's thing. It's different. Difficult to change. You think a year ago, if you walked in a bank, the person wearing the mask in the bank was probably the bad guy. Today, the person in the bank not wearing a mask is the bad guy. When I was policing, the driver in the car holding a bag of marijuana was the bad guy. Now it's the driver in the car holding their cell phone. A year ago, pharmaceutical companies were evil and bad. There was dozens of conspiracy stories and wonderful books written where the bad guys were the pharmaceutical companies. Today, pharmaceutical companies are our saviors, and they're suddenly the good guys. So things change rapidly, and it's sometimes hard to keep up. Just some another you can agree traits that enable systems thinking versus linear thinking. Once again, there's a place for, as Paulette pointed out, there's a time for different types of thinking, and you may see these are types of skills we always hope that we have, that our bosses have, and that you have as a leader or a boss in any organization. But you can, tolerance for ambiguity, people that just can't understand that the people that have with COVID, using COVID again, where we started out a year ago, masks aren't really going to help us at all. And then suddenly masks are mandatory. People that can't deal with ambiguity, that the science changed. The science changed. They understood it was a airborne virus, not a touch. We were wiping everything down with Lysol in our homes and our groceries. We now understand that that's not going to help us much. That it's airborne. That difficulty in changing. We want the facts. We want them to tell us what to do and how to do it, and don't change. And when they change, we find difficulty dealing with it sometimes. So how do you relate to each of these systems? We touched on this before, personally, yourself, and then each of these organizations. So here are some examples of how we relate to each of these areas that we touched on before.
Humanity.
So all sorts of organizations, regional, national associations, think of all the organizations you may belong to or have belonged to. Each of them is part of the organization, looking at it as a whole. It's important to think about all of these as how we relate and when and how we relate to different organizations. So now imagine how the impact you can have on all these organizations in changing and in the types of things that we can do in different organizations that have that ripple effect, whether they're going to promote peace, whether they're going to do whatever. The impact of Elder College, the courses that are given, the influence they may have on somebody that changes their perspective, that has a ripple effect to their organization to change things.
Chris?
Yes?
Brenda is bringing a very interesting point. Brenda, would you elaborate? Oops.
I'm sorry, my question, truthfully, when you talked about anti-vaxxers and whomever, most of these complaints come from Western English-speaking countries. They come from Canada, they come from the States, they come from Britain. So I'm wondering whether or not these criteria that you're putting forward, these ideals and ideology, would they be acceptable in a worldwide context, or really only English speaking in Western countries? Because I'm not sure how
Yeah.
somebody in, I don't know, Central America would feel about this, or in Vietnam, or, you know, in Uganda, for example, or Israel.
Yeah, well, there's always cultural differences, and we can think of them. I would disagree that anti-vaxxers is strictly a Western. Guillermo and I and Rotary have been involved in the polio campaign and eradicating polio, which is down to wild polio virus only remains in Pakistan and Afghanistan today. And part of the obstacle has been anti-vaccine for political reasons. It was a Western plot. It was killing, and in parts of Pakistan, they still murder the vaccinators. They shoot them. And these are mostly women because they can go in the homes. The men can't go in the homes to vaccinate the children, and they're just an oral vaccine. So I think the anti-vax, from my experience, and I was, as Guillermo said when he introduced me, I did some work with the World Health Organization in South Sudan, and Nigeria, evaluating the polio campaign. And one of it was working with alternate medicine people to make sure they were on track, not to say that their types of medicine was wrong, but to make sure they weren't against vaccines. For instance, in Sudan, right up near the Eritrea border, and we visited an alternate medicine person where he read an appropriate passage out of the Quran, wrote it on a piece of paper with special ink, dipped the piece of paper in a glass of water, and that ink would dissolve in the water. The person would drink the water, therefore drink the prayer or drink the quote from the Quran, and that would cure them. And we think that's pretty strange. But I suggest you could go around Ladner and find some pretty strange healthcare initiatives available here. We don't have to look very far to find some odd beliefs in different types of healthcare here. Now, when we visited the person, we weren't there to criticize them or say what. We were there to make sure that after they cured the person, they made sure they sent them for polio vaccines and measles vaccines and rubella and yellow fever vaccines as well. And this guy was on board. I mean, he did his thing, and then they went on to do their own. So long-winded response to that, but I think anti-vaxxers are global. Would this concept work in other countries? I think it would, with the cultural norms that we always have to be aware of in that. Any comment? Guillermo, you come from a different culture, a non-English speaking country. Does some of this fit?
It does, but with one caveat, and Paulette can witness of this, you have to start by being able to have a conversation. Now, the idea of a conversation in many countries of Latin America is to win a point. And so people then start talking all at the same time, and the only way is you hear people talking increasingly louder. Okay. So my daughter here was convinced that whenever we had a Chilean gathering at home, we were having big fights. And no, we were just talking.
Yeah, we always have to be cognizant. So, and that's not just international, it's local. It's working with Indigenous people where eye contact is not as common. You know, look me in the eye, you're not telling the truth if you're looking down. Well, where some cultures where eye contact is seen as rude or something else. So yeah, interesting. Very briefly, and I'm cognizant of the time here. So the concept of community is important to this. Anybody want to try for a definition of community?
I would say it's an entity that gathers different basic groups in a given territory.
Okay. Community about people. Here's the definition I'm using for this, and there's probably lots of definitions. And you know, Delta is not one community; it's multiple communities. It's not just North Delta, Tsawwassen, and Ladner. It's each of those has sub-communities within them, business communities, other organizational communities. So there's bigger communities, and people identify in different ways with their community.
One of the things, Chris, that I thought when you asked that question, and I see it in this definition here, this description, is the sense of belonging. I thought a community is any entity or whatever of more than one person to which those people have a sense that they belong. But when we're talking about homeless people, at any point, they may or may not have been part of a community. That community could have been a family. That community could have been many things. But somehow they've let go, or they've been detached. But then they now looking, that's what they're doing in the homeless groups, is they're looking for a sense of community and of people with shared attributes or have a shared experience. So it's really difficult.
Yeah, it is. It's very challenging. That's a new community. You know, Strathcona, Beacon Hill Park become a new community for those people, and the sense of belonging becomes part of it. So when we say we want to break up your community, we're going to send you to this motel, and you're going to go to this hotel, and you're going to go there. We're breaking people's community up. So. And you know, that's some of the resistance to it. I moved to Delta 15 years ago after 25 years living in Vancouver. Delta wasn't my community. My dentist, my doctor, my committees that I was on, I was going through that tunnel twice a day. Gradually, I broke away from that. I moved to a Rotary Club in Ladner. I moved my doctor. I became part of this community, and I feel I belong here now. So, but it takes time. Just simply moving physically to the community or whatever other type of community it is, we may not belong to it. Think about this, and we'll wrap up with this. You know, how you think you've influenced some of these various groups or organizations, how the impact you've had on it. I'll ask for a wrap up from people in a second, but Guillermo is going to send you it's a fairly large, it's a 60 or 70 page report called the Positive Peace Report 2019. The new report, maybe before we finish this course, the 2020 case would come out. I don't expect you to read it. If you want to read it, There's some hard copies. Does anybody want a hard copy, like other than a PDF?
PDF's fine.
Fine for everybody? Well, maybe we don't need it. I do have some hard copies, but getting to people can be a challenge, but we could arrange for something. When you see the PDF, if you want a hard copy, email Guillermo and we'll arrange either through Elder College in Sawasan or dropping it at your house or something. We'll try to arrange to get you a hard copy. So take a look at it, read the executive summary at minimum, look for the references to Canada in it. Think about why Canada in this report rates where it is. Look up at the chart on the world ranking of countries by positive peace and look at where Canada is rated. Look where the United States is rated, why the difference, we're neighbors. Look at some other countries, look at Chile, where they rate in the positive peace index, and think about why and how we could change it. What external forces, what internal forces are changing that, and we'll get that. I'll get you that later today or tomorrow. And that. Any closing comments from anybody? Any comments? Any questions? Anything you want to talk about?
Well, when I look at the 8 pillars that you put at the beginning of the presentation, I look like a nice graphic and all that until you mention the interconnectedness of those 8 pillars, and then those connections look different. Like if one goes down, it pulls everything down, and or
Yes.
if one goes up, it pulls everything up. I thought that was quite a powerful image.
Well, I think that's important because when we talk about projects, when we talk about working towards peace, it seems, how do we do that? We can't do it. We can't do everything. But if you pick one of those free flow of information, so access to the internet, we talked about Miramar was brought up. What was one of the first things the military did? Close the internet down. So that blocks the free flow of information. So ways to that free flow of information can have the impact on many of the other aspects. So yeah, it does. I think that's important, and it makes it that a small project can make a difference. Otherwise, we look at peace and we say, it's too big, it's impossible. Only big governments can do that. And that's not true. Small projects, are they going to create major peace in the world? Yeah, incrementally, bit by bit. So working in Delta on a small project can influence the city of Delta, can for the province of British Columbia, Canada, or globally to do things. Anything else? Barry?
Yeah, I want to thank you very much, Chris. Actually, I wasn't sure exactly what to expect in this program, and you've made it intellectually challenging for me. So I thank you for that.
Okay,
and I look
good.
forward to reading as much of your PDF as I can before next week.
If you have trouble sleeping at night, that's the place to read it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, one of the things, Chris, and maybe it'll come up or maybe it'll be clearer to me. I keep thinking of Canada itself, and the word reconciliation came up, and I'm thinking about one of our major ways of trying to find commonalities and work toward things. We have people that come from not just different belief systems, but like Indigenous people whose whole concepts of how the world works, and if there is such a thing as systems and so on, and shared values are so different, that how do we, with such graphically different shared values, and we need to and we're working toward respect, but two-way respect, it is very difficult. And the what I was seeing a little bit in the linear versus the systems approach if you just looked at the graphics, as it seemed like some of the concepts in the systems approach seem to be much more organic and might be what we might think are more traditional, coming out of traditional cultures and indigenous cultures, unless you start and getting too linear again. Like, you can just, there's always that Western thinking that sort of creeps back in.
Well, and it's important. We talked about culture and reconciliation and First Nations. I was 2 years ago in Haida Gwaii, and it was sort of, okay, the residential schools, get over it. That was 2 generations ago, and we were talking to an Indigenous person there, and he said school, his grandmother told him how awful school was. School was where you're going to be beaten. School where terrible things were going to happen. His mother and father didn't go to residential schools. He didn't go to a residential school, but it was drilled in him from the part that schools were terrible, and he was frightened to go to school. He didn't want to go to school because in his family, terrible things. So that concept of the residential school has trickled down for 3 generations. And for me, it was sort of like, get over it. That's years ago, and it's still very much in there. And when we're as sitting in Sandspit, talking to this fellow, really, sort of opened to me to explain how this is the impact of the residential schools is still alive and well, and changing people's their attitude towards education. Anyhow,
Jim, he's muted. You can't see him, but I would really be interested in your thinking about that and bring that perspective up maybe in our next classes. One of the things that I look at with the vaccination plan, and somehow we have those that we've elected and those that have been appointed by those that are elected make decisions about how to define the priorities in which people will get vaccinated. And it would seem that the severity, the common good, that's what I grew up thinking Canadian was, is we go for the common good, and we sometimes give up individual things, but I wonder about that. And certainly I'm impressed, but I think it's right, that real thrust to try to get to elders and to the Indigenous communities, not just in the remote areas, but treating people equitably or equally doesn't mean doing the same things, or doesn't mean having exactly the same plan or the same priorities, because everyone is different.
Mm-hmm. I remember one story that Jim Morin told us about visiting some of his family in the prairies. And he noticed that they put the different dishes for the dinner on the counter of the kitchen, and then everybody serves themselves, and everybody sat and they ate in complete silence. And Jim was very curious about why. Okay, well, that was the result of the fact that at residential school, you went to the cafeteria, you got your tray, you were not supposed to speak, and you eat in silence. And many years after, people still had that
subtle things.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks everyone. We'll see you same time, same place next week. And
thanks, Chris.
And I think
hold my hands up to you.
Ron, is this your first course with Elder College?
Yes, it is.
Well, welcome to the group.
Thank you very much, Thermal.
And we hope we will see you in many more sessions.
Yeah, I've hooked into a few other ones as well. So
Good. I
Wonderful.
saw your name on a couple of others.
Yeah.
And,
great,
and Adrian, have you been attending Elder College for quite a while?
I took a class last term called What's News.
Oh, yes.
That was very, very interesting. So yeah, and I enjoyed today's session as well. So yeah, I can really see how the concepts that Chris has been discussing with us would be very good if you were thinking of working towards peace. And you ideally, you would, I mean, I'm thinking people need to network together. And so you need an approach when you bring people together with lots of different ideas to come to play on a particular situation. That this would be a very good sort of a broad idea, or very and very loosely structured. And so I think it's very useful for that. Anyway, I'm rambling on.
No.
But I think you have to network, and I think you have to develop agencies where people work together in order to really bring about positive change, probably with probably with a governmental agency and maybe public input to try and arrive at some kind of a I don't like to say solution because it sounds kind of closed-ended, but to create a more equitable situation, I guess, for most people. And you're not going to get everybody, but maybe you can get a majority. And there's always going to be people that won't wear a mask.
Well,
yeah, I wear my mask.
thank you for being part of this session, everybody, and looking forward for next week. And maybe, and I will make sure that you get your PDF version, okay? And those who were not able to be here, as soon as Chris send me the link, I will send the link to the YouTube.
Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks very
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Yeah, you too.